Animals can freeze themselves and come back to life. Part 1. When death is not the end. Imagine you are walking through a northern forest in the middle of a harsh winter. The temperature drops below -20 degrees Celsius. Everything seems dead. The leaves are brittle as glass. The stream has frozen. Not a sound. Not a sign of life. But under the cold layer of ice, there is a creature lying motionless. Its body is completely frozen. Its heart is not beating. Its brain is not working. Its breathing? No more. Every sign of life is gone. It is like it is dead. But then, when spring comes, the snow melts. Warm sunlight gradually filters through the trees. And something strange happens. The creature slowly comes to life. Its heart beats again. Its breathing returns. It opens its eyes, crawls away, and continues its life as if nothing had happened. It's not science fiction. It's not the plot of a Marvel movie. It's a fact. There's a tiny creature that can freeze itself completely during the winter and come back to life in the spring. Its name is the Alaskan wood frog, Rana sylvatica. This frog lives in North America from Pennsylvania all the way to frigid Alaska. During the winter, when conditions become too harsh, the wood frog doesn't migrate. It doesn't burrow deep to keep warm. Instead, it freezes. That's right. It doesn't avoid the frost, it embraces it. Not just part of its body, but all of it. The wood frog's body becomes as hard as stone. Its heart stops beating completely for weeks, even months. It's lifeless, at least by human definition. But how does a creature do it? And why would it choose to do it? The story begins with a strange biological feature, the ability to produce a natural antifreeze in its own blood. When the temperature begins to drop, the wood frog's body immediately reacts. Its liver produces a large amount of glucose, a type of sugar, and pumps it quickly into the blood. Glucose acts as a cellular protector, helping to prevent damage from freezing. It keeps the cells from bursting when the water in the body turns into ice crystals. At the same time, organs such as the liver, heart, and brain also begin to gradually stop working. Not destroyed, but hibernating. A perfect kind of suspended animation. Science calls this phenomenon suspended animation, a state of suspended life without harming the body. It's like when we press the pause button in a movie. Everything stops, but it doesn't end. For years, scientists have been monitoring, testing, and even recreating the freezing conditions of wood frogs in the lab. They found that this species of frog can survive after nearly 70% of the water in its body is completely frozen. And even more strange, after thawing within just a few hours, the frog's heartbeat returns, its cells start up, and it jumps again. Is this the secret to avoiding death? Or even reversing death? In the next part, we will delve deeper. What really happens inside the body of a frog when it is frozen? Why can't other animals do it? And the scariest thing, science is trying to mimic this ability to apply it to humans. Part 2. Decoding the mechanism inside a frozen body. If you've ever put a bottle of water in the freezer and forgotten it overnight, you know what happens. The water turns to ice. And if the bottle is sealed, it can explode. The reason is that when water changes from liquid to solid, its volume increases. In living organisms, this isn't just unpleasant, it's a death sentence. In living cells, water makes up 70%. When frozen, sharp ice crystals pierce the cell membrane like thousands of tiny knives stabbing into living structures. That's why most organisms can't survive being completely frozen. But the wood frog is different. It doesn't fight the freezing, it controls it. As the ambient temperature begins to drop, a strange process begins in the wood frog's body. The frog's liver rapidly releases a huge amount of glucose into the bloodstream, 100 times more than normal. This glucose is not for energy, but for shielding. It prevents the water inside the cells from freezing. Instead, the water is drawn out of the cells and collects between the tissues. There, it is allowed to freeze. But the cells inside remain protected. They don't explode. They don't get destroyed. They hibernate in a state of perfect pause. And another strange thing, as the freezing process takes place, the frog's heart doesn't slow down, it stops. Not for 10 minutes. Not for hours. But for weeks. During all that time, there is no blood flow. No oxygen exchange. No neurological activity. No life, at least as human medicine has ever understood it. But the magic is this: when the temperature rises, everything comes back. The cells start to reabsorb water. The heart beats again. The brain starts. And the frog opens its eyes and hops away as if it had never been dead for a second. Scientists call this a perfect example of cryobiosis, living in a frozen state. However, the wood frog is not the only species with this ability. In nature, there are several other species that can cryobios hibernate, some freshwater turtles, polar insects, and the tiny mythical creature called the tardigrade. But the wood frog is special in one way: it is one of the only vertebrates on the planet that can survive being frozen all over without permanent damage. This raises a big question: if a frog can do it, why can't humans? The answer is something that has fascinated scientists and medical professionals for decades. Because if we understand how the wood frog postpones death, we can rewrite the very definition of life. Imagine if we could copy that mechanism for humans. One day we could do what seemed impossible: freezing the body, traveling hundreds of light years into space, keeping accident victims alive until a cure is found, or even preserving life to overcome death. That is no longer a fantasy. In the final part, we will explore: can the ability to hibernate like a frog become a reality for humans? And what is really going on in secret laboratories in the US and Russia? Part 3. The Dream of Freezing Humans, Science or Illusion? In 1967, a psychology professor named James Bedford did something no one had ever done before. He became the first person in history to be frozen in the hope of being revived in the future. His body was frozen immediately after his death, pumped full of cryoprotectant solutions, antifreeze, and stored in a tank of liquid nitrogen at -196 degrees Celsius. Nearly 60 years have passed. James Bedford is still there. Not decaying, not resurrected, but not dead again. It was the beginning of a science called cryonics, freezing people after death in the belief that one day future medicine will be advanced enough to cure the diseases that killed them and wake them up again. Sounds like science fiction? Yes, but it's true. Currently, hundreds of people around the world have been cryopreserved at facilities such as the Alcor Life Extension Foundation, USA, or Cryorus, Russia. They are no longer alive, but they are not really considered dead according to the definition of those who performed the procedure. But here's the truth: humans cannot be thawed and brought back to life, at least not yet. Because the human body is extremely complex. Unlike wood frogs, we do not have a mechanism to produce glucose to protect cells, we cannot remove water from cells, and our internal organs are severely damaged if frozen without special preparation. The biggest problem is the formation of sharp ice crystals in body tissue. When water in cells freezes, it destroys cell membranes, rupturing delicate structures in the heart, lungs, liver, and especially the brain, which contains hundreds of billions of irreplaceable neural connections. That's why cryonics is really just a gamble right now, a bet on a future technology that doesn't yet exist. But the science doesn't stop there. At the University of Alaska and many major research centers, scientists are working to replicate the biology of wood frogs, creating biological antifreeze that could protect human cells from freezing. Some groups are even working on editing human genes to create the same biochemical reactions that wood frogs have when exposed to low temperatures, a kind of controlled induction of hibernation. NASA isn't out of the game either. They're working on hibernation chambers called torpor chambers for trips to Mars. The idea: to put astronauts into a state of cold sleep for weeks or months, minimizing the need for food and oxygen and avoiding the psychological effects of living in a closed space for too long. And there is another area of research, quieter but with great potential: delaying death. In emergency medicine, if a person is severely injured, such as a gunshot wound, a car accident, or a stroke, medicine may not be fast enough to save him. But if we can cool the body for just a few minutes, reduce metabolism, slow the death process, then the time for treatment will be extended. That concept is called emergency preservation and resuscitation. It has been tested on animals and is being considered for clinical trials on humans. Science is still a long way from reaching the dream of hibernation, like a wood frog. But the scary thing is, the cold itself, once considered a deadly enemy, is becoming a new ally in the fight against death. The question is no longer, can we do it? But when can we do it? And by then, perhaps death is just a temporary door, a state of waiting, like the way the wood frog waits for spring to come.